Morning and welcome to the JustGrants session on a post-award management. We are happy to have you here today and hope to provide you with the information that you need in order to manage the processes within JustGrants. We are recording the session today and will make the recording available to you as soon as we can. My name is Stacy Kernison, and with me today there are several JustGrants team members who will walk us through certain parts of the post-award management. You will hear from Elisa Hartman, Amy Callahan, Brenda Arteman, and Jennifer Tyson. Before we start, we'd like to review the features in WebEx that will be important for you today. The meeting today includes a chat feature for communicating directly with panelists. We ask that you use this feature if you are only experiencing technical difficulties assessing the session and need assistance. We also offer a multimedia viewer as well as a Q&A feature. The Q&A feature is designed for sessions like ours in which we anticipate that there will be questions. Please use the Q&A feature for your questions about the session content, because WebEx will group the answers with the questions so you don't have to search through a lengthy chat log to find your answers. We have disabled video for all participants so that we have more system resources available to present the content. Should you need or want live captioning, you can locate the multimedia viewer by selecting the icon with the three dots at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Open the multimedia viewer to access the captioning. We also have muted all attendees to reduce background noise. If you cannot hear, please click the arrow to the right of the unmute button at the bottom of your screen and select another audio option. If you are still not able to make the audio work, please consider calling in by phone using the number from the meeting invite details. Again, we would like to remind you that we have activated the Q&A feature to answer your questions on the subject matter today. We have several JustGrants team members monitoring the Q&A, and they will provide answers in writing as much as possible. We will also stop to answer questions verbally during the session and will select questions that may require a greater level of detail than that provided within the chat, or questions that may have been asked a few times. As we receive and answer questions in the Q&A feature, you can use the scroll bar to the right of the Q&A feature to review them. So today we will spend some time going on defining what GAMS, financial and performance reports are. We will go over the entity user roles that play a major role in relation to award management. We will also go over each topic and talk about a few troubleshooting tips in relation to GAMS and financial and performance reporting. And at each section, we will break for questions. Lastly, we will share a few resources to help you and then go over any other questions that you may have. The purpose of today's session is to share with you some information and demonstrations that can guide you as you go through JustGrants. We want to be able to answer the questions that you have about award management. So please feel free to place them in the Q&A chat when we get to the topic, so that way we can stay focused on each area. We want to make sure that this session is interactive and you have a chance to receive the knowledge and tools that you need. So now let's take some time to talk about the terminology that will help you during this session and while using JustGrants. Performance reports are completed and submitted by the entity grant award administrator, who will find the automatically created report in their work list. Performance report provide information related to the performance and activities of the award and may include reporting on performance measurements. Reporting frequencies is based on solicitation requirements. So contact your grant manager with questions about the reporting type or with questions about reporting frequency. Attachments can be uploaded with performance reports as needed. Delinquent reports can result in a hold on your funds, and final performance reports are submitted as a closeout requirement. A federal financial report, or FFR, is submitted by a financial manager and may be submitted 10 calendar days or less from the reporting period end date until the due date and must be submitted in sequential order. To enforce FFR compliance, JustGrants will place funds on suspension if an award has a delinquent submission. Final FFRs are submitted within 90 days after the project period end date. Grant award modifications can be initiated by either a grant award administrator or alternate grant award administrator. Grant award modifications, or GAMs, are a request for a modification to a key element to the funded award. Most GAMs can be initiated by a grantee, but must be approved by a DOJ personnel. GAMs can be created to extend the project period, updated the project scope, modify project cost, reduce the budget amount, modify the budget, or modify the sole source. I will now turn it over to Lisa to talk more about which roles impact the GAMs and performance reports.
Thank you, Stacy. I really appreciate it. I'd like to, before we start talking about roles, I'd like to remind you all that performance reports and federal financial reports should be open from the work list of the assigned grant award administrator or financial manager, and we'll have some demos shortly that will show you how that works. So let's talk about entity user roles. It's important to understand these roles. There are 6 in JustGrants, and each role has unique and separate access to JustGrants. For a user to accomplish the work they need to do, they may need to be assigned more than one role. So we'll take a look at the roles and their corresponding capabilities. So because this is an award management session, we did not place the application submitter role on this slide, but there is an application submitter role that is the 6th one that I spoke about. But regarding award management, we have the entity administrator. So this is a key role in JustGrants. The entity administrator is the individual that manages all user access and maintains accurate information for the entity by coordinating updates in SAM.gov. The entity administrator role alone does not allow any edits to awards or applications in JustGrants, but this role is able to view all information, awards, and applications in the system. It should be noted that the entity administrator has ongoing responsibilities throughout the life of an award. So the person who acts as the entity administrator should be able to access JustGrants frequently in order to maintain user information, reassign roles as needed, and assign users to awards and applications. So it's not just a one-time onboarding role. The authorized representative is the only role that may accept or decline an award on behalf of the entity. This role must be assigned to someone in your organization with the legal authority to enter into a binding agreement with the Department of Justice. And this person must be legally authorized by the organization to agree to the award terms and conditions. The grant award administrator generally handles programmatic requirements, including submitting performance reports, initiating and submitting GAMs, and initiating the award closeout. The alternate grant award administrator currently has very limited capabilities. They cannot submit any programmatic reports. However, they can initiate a GAM. And finally, the financial manager is going to submit federal financial reports on behalf of the organization. So those are 5 of the 6 key awards, and these are the 5 that are going to be playing a role in award management today. So I'm going to talk about a couple of questions, first of all, about financial reports that we often see. First of all, as you can see by the slide, the financial reports are completed only by the assigned financial manager. So each award must have a particular assigned financial manager. They're the ones that do the FFRs. We're often asked how to locate and submit reports in JustGrants. So again, it's important created. That person will see the FFR in their work list as soon as JustGrants generates that report. Another question we get is, how do I reopen, edit, and resubmit financial reports in JustGrants? And the answer to that is it is possible to reopen a submitted FFR to edit and resubmit if needed. However, there are conditions around this capability. You can only reopen the most recently submitted report. Reports prior to that are essentially locked and are no longer going to be able to be editable. We do have some job aids and videos that will help you walk through the process of reopening, editing, and resubmitting an FFR, and we'll provide you with links to that information at the end of this presentation. We do have one of our financial reports subject matter experts online. So, Amy, I was wondering if there was something that you would like to add to sort of provide additional context to either of these questions. Amy, you may be on mute.
Sorry, Lisa. Yes, I was. No additional additions to your responses to the questions. I think they were answered sufficiently.
All right, thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. All right, thank you. So with the federal financial reports, we did want to provide you with a demonstration of how this actually works. So, Amy, did you have any anything that you want to say prior to moving into the demo?
No, I think the demo is going to show users how to open the FFR within the work list. We will a workaround that if you are not seeing your FFRs in your work list, you would be able to go over to the award link in your view, click on the awards, filter for the award that you are looking for, and then you would be able to open up the financial reporting tab within the award, and you can also access your FFRs directly from your funded award. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, I'll go ahead and jump into the demo. So this is, again, the JustGrants homepage. And as you can see here in the work list, this financial manager has 3 federal financial reports. And they might be federal financial reports assigned to different awards as the organization needs. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up, and I'll show you how to open the federal financial report from the work list. Now, the benefit of opening this FFR from the work list is that when you open it, it's already ready for you to get started. There's no need for you to have to, take any other action to sort of open the financial report. So the federal financial report has 3 sections involved, and you can see them at the top: recipient info, report information, and remarks and certification. So we'll walk through each of these sections one by one. As a navigation tip, you can either move from one section to the other by clicking on the section link at the top, or by clicking on this big blue continue button at the bottom right corner. So either one of those will work. So the first page, the recipient info, is that there's nothing for you to edit, but this is all for you to verify that you're working with the right grants, that your organization information is correct, that we're working with the correct DUNS number and EIN. So if this is not correct, then you will want to potentially contact our technical support folks. Most of this information comes from sam.gov, so if you need to correct it, you might want to go to sam.gov and make that correction, and it will flow through to JustGrants. So this recipient account number field is one that you can use internally to match up to any other sort of tracking you have in your own system. This is not a JustGrants thing. You would select the report type. Typically, it will default to the report type based on your project period. And then you can choose your basis of counting, whether it's cash or accrual. Again, you'll take a look. You can't edit, but you can view the project period, the grant full-on project period, and then below that, the reporting period within your project period. So you can see the reporting period for this particular FFR. So now we look at the transactions. The first three transactions, 10A, 10B, and 10C, are not used by DOJ, so they're grayed out. You can ignore those. But as we move on, it's important to know that all of the totals in your federal financial report are cumulative. And by cumulative, I mean the amount from the award's inception to the end of the reporting period. So each new FFR is going to be cumulative from the totals from the previous FFR. So it's important to understand that this is a change for most of you, unless you're working with awards from the Community-Oriented Policing Services Office. They were using cumulative reports previously, but for everybody else, this will be new. And it's important to know that cumulative expenditures are going to need to be entered in lines 10E, 10J, 10F, 10M, and 10N. So all of those, again, are going to be cumulative totals. So we'll continue down, and if you see a little teeny tiny red asterisk to the left of a field, that indicates that some entry must be made. That entry might be 0 for your report, or it, again, is cumulative from previous reports. So we're going to go ahead and enter, and you notice that as you enter, JustGrants makes the calculations for you in the fields in which those calculations apply. We'll move down a little farther. Again, for 10J, you see that this is the required field. You can see that little teeny tiny red asterisk indicating required. So we'll make our entry there. And again, that will populate the calculated amount in 10K. And then here we are, J, M, N are here, cumulative for the project to date. All right. And then finally, we go down to the bottom of this section, and we have indirect expenses. And you will add those line item by line item. And again, you just will fill in the type of rate, the rate percentage. You'll type in the period from and period to for this indirect expense. And again, you can either use the attached calendar icon there, or you can type directly into the field the date, whichever is most convenient for you. We'll put in the base amount. And the base amount times the rate will calculate the amount charged. And then at the end, you'll enter the federal share. And in this case, I believe it's going to be the entire charged amount. So once you've entered, and again, below the indirect cost, you can see you can add items. So you can add individual line items as needed. You can delete items as needed as well. On the third section, the remarks and certifications, you'll enter additional information. There are occasions where this field is validated as required, but it's not going to be in all cases. But again, any additional information that you need to add as a sort of a text narrative will be added here. Below that, you'll see that you can upload supporting documents as needed. It's not a requirement necessarily, but always welcome to support your entries. And again, it's just, choose your file and upload it. It's very, very straightforward. And then finally, at the very bottom of this page, you'll see the certification section. And this will provide the typically your name as the person certifying this report,
when you click submit, your financial report has been routed appropriately. So you'll see that the FFR is in pending UFMS status. This particular status is one in which your totals are being validated by our accounting software, and that will typically be the status for about 24 hours, after which it will be displayed and submitted. So that is sort of a look at the federal financial report. And so now I'd like to see if perhaps Amy can answer some of your questions specific to FFR. So I'm going to look for that in our Q&A.
Yeah, Lisa, there's a question regarding it's difficult to tell which FFR is the one that still needs to be completed. Is there any way I can share my screen real quick?
Absolutely. Karen, can we, if Amy present her, right?
Okay.
Go ahead, Amy.
Thank you. All right, so I am in the test environment, but so you may see some odd data within here. But when you are in your award, so when you go to your awards link right here on your left, and you open your award, you will be able to see these tabs. If you click on the FFR tab, you will be able to identify regarding the status if your FFR is delinquent or if it is open. Because this is test, these are all delinquent. You would be able to then click on the FFR and submit it. And I know we haven't got to performance reports, but it is the same exact functionality for performance reports. So you would click on the performance management tab and then look at the status. In this example, this one has been submitted because it's in pending review. And this PR, the second PR in the list, is delinquent. PRs there is one more step to open a performance report. Once you open the performance report from the list, you will be able to come and over to your actions button, and you need to click on performance report in the actions button to be able to open it up in a perform harness. Once you do that, you would then be able to come in here and edit the performance report and or add an attachment per direction from your grant manager.
Thank you, Amy. That was really instructive. Were there other questions that you see here that most of the ones that I see here are for upcoming content? But did you have anything that you wanted to discuss regarding financial reports before we move into performance reports?
Well, there is another question that I see in the chat regarding I made an error on an FFR. And so if you made an error on an FFR, the financial manager will be able to make an edit and reopen the FFR for the most recent FFR. So in this case right now, you should be able to make edits for your June FFR until the end of September, or the FFR that was ending in June. You can make edits for that FFR until the end of September. The training, on the training site, there are step-by-step directions on how to do that. But once an FFR is submitted, you should be able to go up to that actions button and select reopen, and then you'd be able to edit that directly. External users will not be able to edit final FFRs. And so if you have a final FFR that you need to make an edit to, you would need to contact, for OJP grantees, the OCFO customer service desk in order for an internal user to be able to make the correction to a final FFR. And COPS and OVWs would have to, OVW grantees would have to reach out to their grant managers.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Was there any other points that you'd like to make before we move on to performance reporting?
I'm just checking the Q&A to see if there are any additional questions regarding FFRs, and I don't think we do.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, there is. May more than one person have a financial manager role? So, yes, your organization can have multiple people have financial manager roles. However, a financial manager can only be, so a single award can only be assigned one financial manager.
Yes, that is a critical question. It looks like another one just came in as well. Are cumulative fields added prior reporting period amounts?
So, yeah, so that's correct. A cumulative field needs to include the amount from the initiation of the award, so your project start date, up until the end of that reporting period. And you would have to insert that cumulative amount in the system. So this is something that is different for OJP and OVW grantees. COPS grantees have already been doing this, and this change is to align with the OMB form. And so it is extremely important that for the cumulative data fields that you are adding the cumulative amount from the start of your award to the end of that reporting period.
Okay. We have a couple of questions on roles that maybe I could field. And one is, can I allow someone else to fill in performance reports other than, well, the performance reports are done by the grant award administrator, and the for the FFRs are done by the financial manager. So only one grant award administrator or financial manager can be assigned to an award at one time. And that is the only person that's going to be able to edit those reports. So if you want to have someone else fill in the reports, then that role of grant award administrator or financial manager will need to be reassigned to the person who's going to be filling in that, that information. So that reassignment really reassigns it from one, reassigns those activities on that award from one person to another. They can be reassigned back when that, once that report has been completed. But that reassignment must be done by the entity administrator, and we do have step-by-step training information on how to do that. So yes, you can have another person do it. However, it does require the intervention of the entity manager to make that work. Let's see. Sherry Reller, somebody is asking, Amy, can you explain the amounts reported in 10J? And perhaps if we can go back here, I can try and find that in the video. So 10J here, Amy, did you want to, I know there's an explanation here in the paragraph associated with 10J, but was there anything that you had to provide additional information about that, Amy?
No, I mean, the directions that are provided under 10J there are the directions that are provided for with the OMB form. If you have specific questions about filling out an FFR, I would recommend that you contact the OCFO customer service desk, and they will provide you additional guidance and or review our financial, the DOJ financial guide. I don't believe that the financial guide will provide any additional guidance than what is that is included in here. but each of our data fields do include a definition of what needs to be reported directly within the FFR.
Hey, Amy, this is Brenda. I just wanted to hop in and clarify. For 10J, a lot of times, this is often referred to as your match requirement. So recipient share equals match. So if you have a required match, that is where you would put in the information for 10J. And the information for your required match would be found in 10I, which should be automatically populated from your approved budget. So hopefully that helps as well.
Oh, thank you, Brenda. Appreciate that. I just see one more question that I'm going to answer, then we'll move on to performance reporting. So the question is, can one individual act in multiple roles? For instance, the financial manager, the same person as the authorized representative? And the answer to that is absolutely. You can assign as many roles to an individual as they need to accomplish what to accomplish their work. So yes, you can assign one individual multiple roles. All right, so Amy, did you have anything further that you wanted to go through regarding financial reports?
No. I see that there is a question regarding how do I request my federal funds from ASAP, and so I will be cutting and pasting the directions for ASAP within that question here in just a few seconds. But ASAP is a completely different system than JustGrants, and I will provide you that information here in the near future.
Thanks, Amy. Appreciate it. All right, thanks for all that terrific information about financial reports. I know that people are very focused on them. So now we'd like to turn our attention towards performance reports. And again, we have already been getting some questions in the Q&A about performance reports, so I know that this is going to interest you all. So performance reports are completed only by the assigned grant award administrator. So you can have, again, as we discussed, you can have multiple people within your organization be assigned the role of grant award administrator, but only one of those people is going to be assigned to a particular grant or award. So that's the only person that can submit performance reports for that award. So the first question is, how do I locate and submit performance reports in JustGrants? So again, if you have the grant award administrator role and you're assigned to awards, the reports are going to appear automatically in your work list section of the homepage when they're automatically generated by JustGrants based on your reporting frequency. So you don't really have to do anything. It will just appear there for you. But again, you have to be the assigned grant award administrator on that award for that to happen for you. So another question is, how do I report performance measured data? And again, depending on the requirements of your program, you're going to either submit it by attaching a PDF file from an external system. PNC is one that we use, but there are others. Or you will submit your data using a question set within JustGrants. And Brenda, before we move on to the demo, which will demonstrate both of those methods, and we'll talk about how you'll be able to tell which way you'll need to submit your performance measure data. Brenda, is there anything that you'd like to add to these two particular questions?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay, sounds good. Then we're going to go ahead and do a demonstration of the performance measures, and we will demonstrate both methods of submitting, a performance report. So again, with a performance report, if you are the assigned grant award administrator, you will see these performance reports in your work list, and here they are. If you're the alternate grant award administrator, you will not see these in your work list, only the grant award administrator assigned. So as you can see, you'll be able to see the case ID, which is the individual report. You'll be able to see the due date for that report. You'll be able to see whether it's, how many days you have to complete this report, or if it's past due. And it should be understood that a past due performance report will ultimately wind up causing a suspension of your funds. So it's important to address these delinquent reports that you see here, and the case status here will show you that. So I'm going to go ahead and show you when you open up from your work list a performance report. It will open up again in a manner that will allow you to immediately edit that report. And we'll take a look at that. And this one, as I recall, takes the time. Okay, so we've opened a report. So now I want to bring your attention to this header field here. And I'd like to show you where it says Grant Award Administrator, second from the bottom in the header field. It tells you exactly who can submit this report. If that's not your name, you're not going to be able to submit the report. Only that person will be able to. And again, that can be reassigned as needed, but currently only Carlos is going to be able to submit this report. So this is an example of a performance report that's going to be expected to be managed by uploading, a file, typically a PDF file. And the way I know that is that below this grayish box here where it says complete performance measure question set, there is no question set. So without a question set, then that means that your performance measures will need to be uploaded as an attached file, which is fairly straightforward. So at the top, you can see the start date and the end date for this performance report. And you can see the date that it's due to be submitted. The day after that, it will become a delinquent report. And as you can see, this is a regular report. There should only be one final report. You can change a report from regular to final if you are closing your award early. Once you change a report from regular to final, it is not an easy path to change it back. So if you do inadvertently change this to a final report by mistake, you will need to contact our technical support folks because it is something that is really very difficult to do. So it says, please confirm. It does remind you one more time that once you update it to final, you'll not be able to revert it back. I'm going to cancel this because that's not what we want here. Again, we'll scroll down. There's a section here where you can add comments about your performance report, and these comments would be seen by your grant manager. Again, we're showing here that there's no question set, which again indicates an upload option. So again, you can enter comments as needed. I'm going to move this forward a little bit because it types slow. Okay, so in this case, we're uploading an attachment from PMT. And then as we scroll down a little bit and save, then you'll see that comment becomes saved in the comment history section there. And right below that is the attachments, and this is very straightforward. You'll click upload, and you will locate a PDF file that you have created and downloaded to your workstation station from your performance measures reporting software. Select that file, and you can change the name of the file, but you can change how the file is displayed, but you can't change the file name itself. So there's that. And then notice the category. That's very important. It must remain performance report for JustGrants to recognize this as a performance report. So that's important as well. So we'll move forward a little bit. You'll just attach that file. And we're talking a little bit more. Attach that file. Okay, my screen seems to have frozen. My screen seems to have frozen, so I'm going to go back and forward, and I will pick up where we left off here.
right. All right. So at the end, once you've uploaded the file, you'll click this blue Submit button, and that will then go ahead and submit your performance report to your grant manager for review. All right. I believe we have a static screen here, so unfortunately, all right. So unfortunately, I am struggling with this demo. If you do have a performance report with a question set, what you're going to see here is a question set link, and you would click the link to this question set here. That will then open up a question set for you, and all of the fields will be presented to you as individual questions. You'll go through all of the questions in the set, and at the end of entering the questions, you'll click a Finish button. And many people will think that once they finish the question set, that Finish button will submit the report. It does not. It only finishes your question set. At the end of that, you'll close out of the question set, and you'll come here, and you will then be able to go ahead and submit your report from that screen. So I'm going to move off of the demo. Unfortunately, I apologize for not being able to display the question set piece. I will have to figure out what happened to that demo software. So Brenda, I don't know if we've had a chance to take a look at the performance reporting questions here, but I will take a look. I know there were a couple at the very beginning.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. There were a couple of questions in here, and I'm going to go to one that I answered a little bit in the Q&A for just a little bit more clarity. So one of the questions was explaining what is PMT and how to get access. So PMT is a performance management tool that OJP uses for certain grant programs in certain grant offices, and grantees will report their data in PMT. That is not across the board in OJP. If you are an OVW or a COPS grantee, you will not use PMT. If you are an OJP grantee that uses PMT to report, so for example, my home office is BJA and I worked on the JIG program, JIG reports in PMT. To create an account for PMT, you would have to reach out to the PMT service desk and have them create an account for you. I think when Lisa was mentioning sort of uploading your reports from PMT, that's sort of like a catch-all term. So if you are an OVW grantee, I previously worked there, and you would have a PDF performance report that you would attach as your performance report in JustGrants. And the same thing for COPS if there's an attachment of any sort, whether it's an external secondary system or an actual PDF of a form that you fill out. That's how you would attach for a performance report that uses a secondary system or form to submit data. I see Jessica had a question about where to find the required reports to be attached to the performance report. So that would be specific on the office that you are getting your grant funds through. If you are, for example, you know, a BJA, again, because BJA is my home office currently, and I worked in the Stop School Violence program, that was a program that had previously reported questions in our old legacy system as a survey, and so they have question sets that they have to complete in the performance management module. One thing that I would also, just want to remind folks about that Amy had, as she had demonstrated the sort of secondary navigation, if you don't have a performance report or an FFR in your My Work list, when you go into the funded award, something that I do recommend that grantees have at, sort of easy access is to take a screenshot of that chart, of that performance report module or the federal financial report module that shows the case IDs, the reporting periods, and the due dates that are populated in your file right now. As the system continues, as we continue to move forward through dates, you will have additional performance reports and FFRs that populate. But if you're trying to figure out how to identify which performance report you have to submit first, and it's not evident or it's not clear to you on your My Work list, navigate into your funded award and take a screenshot of that so that you can reference back to your My Work list what the case ID is that would be most appropriate to fill out for your performance report or FFR that you need to submit. And then I would also, I don't see other questions, but the only other suggestion that I do have is if you are a grantee that has a question set, because we weren't able to demo it, and maybe we'll try to see if we can demo it before the end of the session. There is a video on the JustGrants website that houses all of our training materials. And on that video, it does show the entire process of submitting a performance report with a question set because it is a multi-step process.
Thank you, Brenda, for all of that great information on performance reports. Let's see. There are a couple of questions here that maybe I could, they're sort of not in general performance management questions, but perhaps, Brenda, I could ask you, here's someone who works on a grant at a university representative as a grant administrator. So this person can't see due dates or what has been uploaded. Is there a way to resolve this? What role would be most appropriate for me to have? The grant administrator, the alternate grant award administrator?
Yeah, so I know this is really common for universities, and yes, having an alternate grant award administrator role would at least give you like a read-only view of the award file so that you could see the different sort of reporting requirements. But the person who is assigned as your grant award administrator can also provide you, with screenshots or summaries of, these are the due dates or, these are the reporting periods that you have to report on. So I think that might be a workaround, unless anybody else on the business rep team, if you guys have any other thoughts.
All right. Well, that sounds like a good place to start. Thank you, Brenda. I have another question. This is actually not an award management. It has to do with applications, but I recently submitted a grant application and received an email confirmation the grant application was received. However, in JustGrants, the application states past due. Is there an issue with the grant application? So I do believe that we have had a situation in which submitted grants are still displaying the due date, and JustGrants is reacting to the due date on the application. And what it's saying is that the time for the deadline to submit the application is past due, but if you've already submitted your application, you can ignore that. Did anybody else want to provide additional context to that? That's about the limit of what I know about that situation. All right. Well, unless there are additional, here's another one, Brenda. If you made a mistake on your PMT report you uploaded, do you have to contact your grant manager to make changes?
Yes. So if you made a mistake on your PMT, you would have to contact PMT to reopen the PMT report for you to make those changes. Then you would have to download that as a PDF, email that to your grant manager who would then upload it to the performance report. At this time, that's the workaround. In the future, we will have the ability to change request performance reports to grantees. But until that time, the workaround is to make sure that you provide the updated PMT to your grant manager so they can upload it to the performance report. And then, Lisa, I just want to go back to one question that was from Alexis on how do you know what to submit for performance report when there are no questions? So that likely means that you are that you have a grant from a program that does not use a survey or a question set in JustGrants, and that your program uses some sort of either secondary system like PMT, or there are specific forms that you have to fill out. So if you're an OVW grantee, the VAWA MEI website has the PDF of the performance report that you have to fill out for any of your programs. So if you're an ICGR grantee, you would go to there, download the PDF, fill it out, and then upload that. Whenever you have a question about what you should submit for your performance report, please reach out to your grant manager. They're going to be the ones that have the most specific information and the most up-to-date information on what you should be submitting to report for your program.
Okay, that's great. That's great. All right, thank you. All right, Brenda, is there anything that you wanted to say to sort of close out this performance report section? We will, by the way, at the end of the entire session, come back and if there are additional questions on these particular topics, we can answer them then. But we want to make sure we talk about GAMs as well. But Brenda, do you have anything to close out this section?
Not yet, nope.
Okay, sounds good. Well, let's move on then to grant award modifications. So again, grant award modifications, or GAMs that we call them for short, are completed and submitted by the grant award administrator. They're generally expected to be initiated by a grantee. However, in unusual circumstances, a DOJ personnel can initiate a GAM on behalf of a grantee. But again, the expectation is that grantees will handle this. So all GAMs must be approved by DOJ personnel. So we have a couple of questions around GAMs that are fairly frequent. And the first is, what types of GAMs can be submitted in JustGrants? And really there are three categories of GAMs, and we have programmatic GAMs, which include also the programmatic GAMs include the scope change and programmatic cost GAMs. And then we also have financial GAMs, and those, we have several types of financial GAMs. The most commonly accessed are the budget modification and sole source GAMs, although we have a couple of other GAMs that are less often handled. So those are essentially the types of GAMs. We do, again, have training documentation that shows you how to step-by-step initiate and submit each one of these individual types of GAMs. So we'll refer you that training site in our resources section here shortly. So another question we find is how a grantee can initiate and submit a GAM. And again, GAMs are initiated and submitted by the grant award administrator assigned to the award. And to initiate a GAM, you are going to have to open the award itself and navigate to the GAM tab. And I'm going to show you a demonstration of this process here. This has been a process that has also raised some questions, so we want to make sure that we demo what you need to do in order to be successful at initiating a GAM. Once that GAM has been initiated, it's going to appear in the work list for the assigned grant award administrator for updates or for further work, but the actual initiation of the GAM takes place in the award. So that having been said, let's take a quick look at how to initiate a GAM. So again, you'll notice on this particular work list that we have three case IDs. So here's a GAM, and again, this one has been initiated, and so it appears in the work list for the person that is initiating, the grant award administrator for this award. You see a performance report also for the grant award administrator, and you also see a funded award
that's in closeout. So these are sort of the individual tasks that you'll find in your work list. And it's important to kind of, you know, understand what you're looking at here. You can look at the case type if the case ID doesn't give you enough information. And I did want to, and I forgot to mention earlier, and I did want to mention, you see these little triangles here to the left of each of these case IDs? If you click that triangle, it will open more information, including the grant number and the solicitation information. So if you're not sure which financial report or performance report or GAM this task is associated with, use this little caret here to the left, and that will then give you the information you need to associate with a particular award. So that is point. So what we're going to do to initiate a GAM is we're going to go to this awards section here. And these are all the awards that are, you know, that are here in the system. And you can see who the grant award administrator is in the column here, the third column from the left. So you're only going to be able to initiate a GAM on an award that has your name in this column. So that's an important piece to remember. And we'll go ahead and open up this funded award. And now this is really where a lot of people get tripped up. So when you open up an award from this awards menu, because different people access this award, not everyone is going to be able to do every task in here. For instance, if you're the grant award administrator, but you're not the financial manager, you'll be able to do the performance reports and the GAMs, but you won't be able to do the federal financial reports. So this assignment list here sort of sorts out who can do what. If you see a begin button here on the right, that means that that particular thing you can do. So for instance, this performance measure survey, you have begin. This FFR, there's a begin, and those can be opened by you. The programmatic begin allows you to sort of open up the entire award here and then have access to edit whatever you need to edit. The key takeaway here is if you do not click the begin button, you will not be able to make any edits. You won't be able to initiate a GAM. So once you click that begin button and you go to the grant award modification section here, you'll see that there's a type of award list here. And so you want to choose the category, the financial, project period extension, or programmatic. And if you choose a programmatic or financial, then you get to choose the subtype. So in this case, you know, we're just going to go ahead and we would select the subtype. And once we do that, then creating a new GAM is where we're going to start. So again, I just can't emphasize enough the importance of making an appropriate decision in this task assignment page. And again, if this person is both a grant award administrator and a financial manager, then they will be able to open these financial reports as well as the performance reports, as well as this programmatic tab. So that's that is again the source of a lot of our questions at the desk. So now I'm going to go ahead and walk through a budget modification GAM. So again, each of the GAMs that you are going to submit are going to have their own fields, their own information you're going to have to enter. So I'm only going to show one, but our training website has an example of every kind of GAM that you would need to submit, and it's got step-by-step instructions for all of them. So we'll point you in the direction of those resources here shortly. So once you're going to select in the grant award modification section, you're going to select the type of GAM. The budget modification GAM is a financial GAM. You'll select that, and you'll notice once you select the type and the subtype, then that create new GAM button becomes blue and active, and you can click that in order to open. If you want to see in progress GAMs associated with a particular award, below this initiate dialog, you have the ability to see both in progress GAMs and completed GAMs. So all of the GAMs for a single award are captured in one place for your viewing pleasure. So we're going to go ahead and create a new GAM. So here is the budget modification GAM. You see on the left the approved budget, which is not editable. You see the requested changes, which have nothing in it. And on the right is the revised budget. And that's where you'll be able to edit the amount of money you want to
allocate to a particular budget category. So notice that once you make changes to your revised budget, it will automatically calculate the requested changes for you. And it will keep all of that information straight for you. If there's a match amount or a program income amount associated that you want to update, you can make those changes there again. And I want you to notice, too, in the middle of the screen here, you see a link to the DOJ Financial Guide on indirect costs. So if you have questions as to what constitutes an indirect cost, that is your guide. When you're creating a GAM, you'll be expected to type a justification. And you may also want to, for instance, upload an indirect cost rate agreement or other financial GAM documentation. You just use those buttons to upload files. And then we have grant management comments. And these are comments that you can write to your grant manager for their review when they're reviewing your GAM. And when you can click submit, then it's then routed accordingly. So that is stepping through the process of doing a GAM. So Jen, I know this is your special area of expertise. Did you have anything you wanted to add to the demo or the other initial content?
Yeah, so I'll just emphasize like a few things that Lisa went over, because I know some of these questions came in over the chat too. So the first thing is, and this is the sort of the two big questions we get about initiating GAMs, right, is one, you have to make sure you either have the grant award administrator role or the alternate grant award administrator role, and you've been assigned those roles for the specific award that you want to initiate against, right? So you have to have the roles in diamond, and then the entity administrator has to say, for this particular award that you want to do a GAM against, you are either the grant award administrator or the alternate grant award administrator. And then the second one is the thing that Lisa, I think, was anticipating and sort of got back to the screen to illustrate, is this begin button. We know it's not necessarily the most intuitive, and it's something that, you know, may be a little clearer in the future. However, when you open this up and you see the begin, this is after you get to the award, you have to hit that begin in order to initiate the GAM. If you sort of are going to a place where you can see a lot of the award information and you see some GAM tab, but there's no create new GAM button associated with it, like Lisa showed, it's probably because you're in what's called the read-only version of the award, just so that you can view content and you haven't hit the begin. So generally when folks contact us saying they can't initiate GAMs, it's like one of those two reasons. So those are definitely the two things that come up the most.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you, Jen, for those clarifying remarks. I do see a question here about, do we have a sample GAN or a copy of the form that we need to use to submit a GAN for OBC grants?
Yeah, and in the chat there, I posted a link directly to the grant award modification, what's called the job aid for that. So that is the most comprehensive document that sort of goes over every type of GAM, as well as sort of, you know, some key sort of information about those GAM types. However, if you have a question about, you know, like OVC is a program office, depending on what GAM you're submitting for what purpose, there's probably program-specific guidance, and so if that's the case, we're definitely reach out to your grant manager just to make sure you have everything that's needed for the specific request.
Thanks, Jen. I have a couple of questions. I submitted a GAM but can't find it or see if action is taken on it. What would be your advice?
So in that case, what you can do is you can actually look at the sort of read-only of the award, right? Or you can open up the award, and when you go to the GAM tab, either to initiate it, a GAM, or check on it, you will see all of your in-progress GAMs, right? So if you are looking for a specific, and I think Lisa's sort of getting to where you see that there, is you can see any that's in progress. So if you think you submitted a GAM, you want to see where it is, you can see if you at least submitted it in there. Now, what you won't see is like specifically, right, there's a whole review process in DOJ about the GAMs that are governed by the different types. So you won't see specifically like who it's with for the review, but generally there's several levels of review for these GAMs. So if you want to know beyond just whether it was submitted and to know where it is in the process, then your grant manager is the right person to ask about that, because they can see a little bit more internal information about sort of which internal actors are still taking action on that. So just to summarize, you can see all in progress GAMs, but it won't tell you specifically where it is. If it's in progress, your grant manager can help you understand, you know, how it's going in the review process and its expected timelines for a review.
All right, that's great, thank you. I know that answered questions for a couple of people. Let's see. I am not seeing additional GAM questions.
Hey, Lisa, there was one that just came in. Jen, did you see that from Melissa?
Yep, that's a great question, so I'll read it out loud. So suppose some adjustments need to be made within a budget line item, but money does not need to move between budget categories. Would a GAM still need to be done? And I will say the answer here depends, right? So the best resource is the DOJ Financial Guide and your grant manager to verify whether a GAM is needed. What I will say is, in general, if you look at the DOJ Financial Guide, moving a certain dollar threshold between categories is one reason you would need to do a budget modification, but not the only reason. There's other things about sort of changing the scope of the budget, or if you know, something specific is changing about, you know, those costs within those line items. So that is a case where if you're not sure, definitely check that DOJ Financial Guide and contact the grant manager to see if a GAM is necessary, depending on specifically what you're trying to do. And in some cases, what I will also say, even if it's not a budget GAM, it may be that you're changing something else important about your, you know, award that may require a different GAM type. So again, that's where your grant manager can advise.
Excellent. I'm not, let's see. Here's a question: how many times can you modify a budget within a year?
So there's no specific limit instituted within JustGrants about how many of the same types of GAMs you can initiate over the course of any period of time. There are some considerations there, and I tried to actually put this a little bit in the chat, but I think it's worth you know, elaborating on a little here, which is one consideration is if you already have a budget modification in progress, for example, and you want to initiate a second one, the system won't let you until you complete the first budget modification. So if you've submitted a budget modification, now you realize, wait a second, we've actually made another adjustment, the correct sort of request at that point is to request the budget modification back if it's in progress to be edited, because you will not be able to submit a second one while the first one is in progress, because it essentially is creating duplicate requests. Then the only other consideration is more of just, again, sort of discussing with your grant manager. The system won't limit you on how many budget modification GAMs you're submitting. But if it's something that it's, you know, you probably want to talk through with your grant manager, if it's in general, right, a lot of sort of changes in the award, you want to discuss with your grant manager. So it's not a system thing, but definitely, again, a sort of grants management conversation to have with the grant manager.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Another person is asking, will you be discussing performance management submissions that used to go in as GANs in the prior system?
So I can touch on that briefly. So one of the things, and I think Stacey might have touched on this at the very beginning here, which was so with the launch of JustGrants, right, the way and which sort of GAM types are available is a little narrower than if you were used to GMS, right? So, and I think in particular, it's about those things like with deliverables. Like historically, some folks manage deliverables through the GAM process in GMS. Now, GAMs, right, are really aligned with those sort of sections of the DOJ financial guide that require that sort of specific prior approval to modify some specific details about your award, and things that are sort of just, documenting that you're in line with the award and the award expectations and the award conditions are really submitted in other ways now, either through the performance reporting, or in that same section of the performance reporting, you can also upload deliverables. So that's sort of the distinction, right? If it's sort of just submitting things in accordance to as things were outlined in the award already, it tends to be in that sort of performance management part of it, part of the award. If it's modifying, changing something, we're changing what the scope or the time period or the amount or how we're allocating funds, and it's specifically in DOJ financial guide that you need prior approval, that's the GAMS now.
All right, thank you. All right, I see there's one more question about GAMS that's being answered in the chat, but I'll read it out. Can you have different types of GAMS at one time? Project period extension, financial GAM, or programmatic GAM?
Yep, there's no limits to doing non-duplicative GAMs. So you can also even have two programmatic GAMs in process at the same time, for example, if they're not changing the same thing. So the point I was trying to make about like in progress is if you can't have what is potentially duplicative or conflicting GAMs in progress at the same time. So for example, you can't have two budget modification GAMs in progress because both of those are trying to change the same part of the award. But for example, you could have a scope change in progress that is, and a programmatic cost GAM. And even within the programmatic cost GAMs, if you're seeking prior approval for like foreign travel, and you can have that in progress, and then in the next one, you're seeking approval for consultant rates, like those can be in progress at the same time. It's that you can't have two exactly identical GAMs trying to change the same part of the award at the same time in progress. One needs to be resolved before you initiate the next one.
Okay. All right. I don't see additional questions here. There is one question that I think that I found in the chat that might be just worth taking a quick moment to answer. And that question is, how can I know which role I'm assigned? Only the financial manager can submit the FFR. And the answer to that is, from your home page, you want to look here on the third option down in the menu called Entity Users. That will show you all of the users in JustGrants and the roles that they're assigned, including yourself. So that would be your best option there. So, Jen, I think
Lisa.
Yes.
Sorry, this is Brenda. I just wanted to follow up quickly on that. So while that Entity Users tab will show all of the roles that have been assigned to a person's profile in Diamond, it may not necessarily indicate that they have been assigned a role to a specific award. So they would need to reach out to their entity administrator to make sure that that assignment is correct.
That's correct. Thank you, Brenda, for that clarification. That's important for you. Definitely important for you.
Hey, Lisa, can I share my screen to just highlight a couple of questions that were asked?
Yep, absolutely. So, Karen, can we get the share to Emmy? Thanks.
Okay. Once again, I'm in the test environment, so there may be some odd-looking data that we are going to be viewing. But there's a couple of things I wanted to show. Somebody asked, and I responded in the QA, where you can find your award number in the work list. So if you click on this little triangle, it will expand the view and you would be able to see the award number directly within that expanded view. The second thing that I wanted to highlight is if you just want to know your roles, and I know that Brenda just briefly said it, you can quickly come in here, find your name, find your roles. If you want to know what awards you're assigned, you can click on the entity profile up here. Oh. Oops.
So Amy, that only works if you have the entity administrator role.
Oh, okay. All right, sorry about that, never mind that. One of the other things that I wanted to provide to you is the fact that if you come in here, and I wanted to show you what a performance report looks like for a question set. And the question set, here is a report with a question set. There will be a link right here under the question set. If you click on that link and you click this begin button, you will then be able to come in here and start answering questions. So you can come in here and you would follow the questions, answer the questions, click continue when you've completed a section, and it will do a validation and move you to the next section. Any question that has a little red asterisk would be a required section. So you see all of this question has a red asterisk and so on. So I have to answer these. And you see the screens kind of walk you through the performance report and the data that you are submitting. I'm trying to complete this quickly because there's a lot in this example that I have. You'll see that there are validations. I tried to add text when it needed a number. Sometimes there's going to be an accordion, so I answered this question, and a second question appeared, and a third question appeared here. All right, once I click finish, oops, I can't have it blank. You're going to come up here to Actions. You're going to go to Close. And you will come back to your performance report. You can also upload a document if need be, per the direction from your grant manager, and then hit Submit. So that was a quick demo. I know there were a couple questions about closeouts. If your award is 1 day past the end date of your award, your closeout package will appear here. If you need to initiate a closeout prior to an award, you need to be able to come into your awards link. You can find your award. I'm going to look for an award that is active. you will be able to scroll down here. Click on closeout. And there should be a blue button right here that would allow you to close out the award. I don't have the correct user role in this example to be able to show you that. And to close out an award, you would be able to do that with the grant award administrator, and you have to be assigned to this specific award to be able to do that.
Amy, before you close out the screen, can you actually scroll back up and click on the programmatic begin button? So I wanted to show two quick things here. So one, so if you click on the closeout, I think that's where the blue button appears. Yeah, and then the other one, there was a question here about how to add award deliverables. So if you can navigate to the performance management tab, I think that's where they go. And then, yep, so underneath that performance reporting section, there's a section for award deliverables where you can attach files and upload. And again, I believe that is just only the grant award administrator role can do that. But if there's another business rep that knows otherwise. And then I also, I'm sorry, should have gone back to the closeout for a second. OMB did change the time in which closeouts have to be completed. So I know in one of the questions, there was a comment about an award that ends on 9/30. Typically, prior to November of 2020, all closeout packages had to be submitted within 90 days after the award end date. All of the awards that have a closeout now of 9/30, you would have 120 days to submit your closeout package. So, and I'm sorry, since Amy's here, so if you are a grant award administrator and let's say you wanted to initiate a closeout early, I've worked with grantees who've done this. The recommendation is making sure that your final federal financial report is showing in a status of resolved approved, and that your performance management is also showing in a resolved approved status. Once you click on that closeout award from that closeout package, you will then need to go back to your My Work list, and then you would see the closeout package appear in your My Work list that you can then initiate it and submit it to your grant manager for approval.
All right, ladies, thank you so much. Those demos are so helpful, and I appreciate you going through that, Amy, because I was not able to do that in my demo. I'd like to take a few minutes to turn this over to Stacy, who can provide us with a list of resources for you as you move forward. And then at the end of that, we can answer a couple more questions as needed. Stacy?
Thank you. So we hope that you gain insight from the material that we've presented today. But before we close, we'd like to provide you with additional resources that we have created to guide you through the process. Embedded within this PowerPoint are the links of all the information in which we covered today. The JustGrants website houses all of the training materials that you will need to work your way through JustGrants. We have placed direct links here to GAMS, performance, and financial reporting, and which all can be found on the JustGrants website. You will also find a link to the user's role guide to help you decide who should receive which roles within your organization. If you need to contact our technical support, you can do so by sending an email to justgrants.support@usdoj.gov. This will automatically open a support ticket for you, and one of our support staff will follow up with you. You can also call 833-872-5175 Monday through Friday between 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the weekends and holidays. Some of the reasons you may contact or support the help or support desk is if your entity administrator is no longer with your organization and that role has not been reassigned prior to their departure, or if you're having issues with the grants not showing up or the reports not processing as they should. So also when using JustGrants, if you find that the system is not working as intended, you can open a support ticket for assistance. We've talked a little bit about the online site for training materials, and this is what the JustGrants training website looks like. You can find a wealth of information about JustGrants here at justgrants.usdoj.gov. And we're going to focus on the training link today so that we can kind of look at that. So please take the time to look through the website for all sorts of useful information. So once you open up the training link, you'll see a list of the training topics that are displayed. Not all topics apply to everyone, so you can reference the helpful table on the right to see which topics apply to you. And it's a good idea for everyone to start with the Entity User Experience Guide and kind of just work your way through each one of those topics. Typically, you'll find a job aid reference guide and a link to step-by-step videos. They're very short videos, but they're meant to use while you're working through so you can kind of have it side by side to kind of help you get through JustGrants. The job aid reference guides provide step-by-step instructions with screenshots. So if you wanted to print that off and have that beside you as well, there are also great references for that. So now we'll go back to any remaining questions that we have before we close. I just want to say before we get to the questions, at the end of this session, there is an evaluation that we ask that you fill out. So once you close out of WebEx, it will pop up in a new browser. So if you can take the time to fill that out, we would greatly appreciate it so we can make sure that we are bringing you quality trainings. So Lisa, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, Stacey. Those references, I hope you'll take advantage of them. There's just a whole library of reference materials there for you. So I don't see any additional unanswered questions at this time, but I'd like to see if maybe we can ask Amy, Brenda, and Jen to maybe say a couple of closing words. So maybe we'll start with Amy.
No additional comments from me. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amy, for all your great information on performance reporting. Brenda, did you have anything to say to close out?
Just one helpful tip. Your actions button is your best friend. Whenever you have problems navigating, check for your actions button to see if there's an action that you may need to take, whether it's a close function or to navigate maybe to a next screen, but make sure to check that if you run into some navigation problems.
Thank you, Brenda. That's a great closing thought. Jen, did you have anything for closing remarks?
Hi, sorry. Just thanks again to everyone for coming. I don't think there's anything else with GAMS other than just double check your roles for the award, and if you're not seeing that initiate, go try and find that begin button. And thank you everyone for coming.
All right, thank you. And on behalf of all of us, thank you all for attending and for taking your time to join our session today. Hope you have a great day.